Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. In today's episode, we're heading back out to the edge of the map, where the Pacific Ocean really makes itself known. We're going to be detailing out some rugged cliffs and tidal washed islands. And we're also going to be creating a little quiet town nestled along the shoreline. We will wrap up the episode with some historic heavy industry, recreating an old copper mine that clings to the hillsides. The area we're going to be working on today is just on the other side of this cliff. Right down here. My name is Geifs, and let's get started. Okay, so coming to near the end of the detailing along the coastline here. Yeah, I think we have one more project after this, and that project is going to be pretty short. So what we're going to be doing in this episode is we're going to be making some rather drastic changes to the shoreline here. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is, I've said in the previous episode, when I created the map, I didn't really know what I was going to be building. And now that we've really focused in on the Pacific Northwest, I have to make some alterations to make sure the shoreline really matches the region I'm trying to recreate. I'm putting on that little hotel there just for scale reference. Sometimes when you're dealing with large flat areas, it's difficult to judge the scales, and sometimes just the road layout doesn't really help. Buildings can work very well for this. For the shoreline here, what I'm going to be doing is creating a rather extensive tidal flat area. We're going to do this idea where there's going to be some islands. There are islands at high tide, and when the tide is out, they are part of the beach. Now everything here is going to be sand pretty much. Now, and when I'm putting down this texture, I make a mistake here. I put the texture over like everything. This turned out not to be a good way to do it, but you can see this sand texture, it's not very detailed. We have to do a lot to bring out those details. Here's where the problem is. I am drawing over top of it this rocky surface, and these two textures or surfaces are in competition with one another, and later on you'll see what happens. It's not a big problem, it's easy to fix, but it's something just to keep in mind when using the surfaces. I'm essentially copying what I did over by the lighthouse here. It's just a rocky island, and then there's trees and shrubs on top of it. I decided this peninsula here was a little too much, so we just chopped it off a little bit and redrew it. Now I'm going to be using some of Gaga XM's new surfaces here to blend it all together. Much like what we did with the little creek in Snug Harbor. One of the real vision decals here for the kind of this one's great for it. It really does look like moss growing on the rocks, which is just great. And I'm also going to be experimenting with some stain decals under the water surface here. I have to practice this a bit more, but it definitely a bit of variation to the surfaces under the water. If you've ever used Sully's sand decals, you know you can create these wet edges, and that's what I'm trying to do here. It's not 100% successful. What I'm using is the 10% black surface, which is just dark enough to give us a bit of a wet edge, but I don't really have any way to blend it properly with the sand, so it's hit and miss with that one. I don't think you can hear it, but I have like seagulls outside my window right now, which is appropriate, but I don't think that's going to carry through onto the actual sound recording, unfortunately. I'm using a bunch of different techniques here to blend the hard edges of the surfaces so they're not so obvious edges, and that is boulders, rocks. We're going to be putting a lot of dead trees and stuff also right here, or these logs and stuff washed up onto the shoreline. Now these are obviously logs for like lumber, like a lumber yard or something, but to be honest, a few weeks being tossed around the ocean, yeah, they're stripped down and there's no branches on them anymore, and we're gonna get really crazy. We have this little cove here where they get washed up and get stuck. I thought this looked really, really good. We're also going to be putting down a bunch of dead pine trees and knocking them down for trees that have been just recently washed away. And there we go, our tidal flats. Now, okay, so there was a problem with the surfaces. Basically, the sand overrode the rock, and all I really have to do is delete the sand and redraw it, making sure not to cover the rock surface. It's a pretty easy fix. It didn't take too long to correct this. But it's obviously something to keep in mind while putting down surfaces. Now, with this particular sand surface, over huge areas, it's very flat and uninteresting. So we're using this stain decal. These are like, I'm not sure what these are. These are light stains or like dusty surfaces. And this is just perfect for the drier sand farther up the beach. It works really well. And it gives you just enough variation in the surface that you can actually see it. I also thought we really need something really dramatic to look at this beach. So I'm gonna be putting in a bit of dramatic cliffside sea stuff here. We could imagine this area to be a national park of some sort for the dramatic beach. And I put out some spawners for some sea life and birds and stuff. I haven't done that really at all in the map. It has some interesting effects. Like right here where these dolphins are gonna beach themselves. Oh no! Oh. Okay, the little town. The little town, there's really not much to this. It's not really, the beach is really the main feature. The beach and the mine I'm going to be creating later in the episode. Right here, I am using the fire station as a town hall, and I'm going to splice in the extension for the crematorium, and so it gives it a front entrance. This is all just a prop, not functional. And I'm just putting down some basic services here so the town doesn't burn down. We're not going to get crazy with the education. We're going to keep it at an elementary level. I need a pool of undereducated workers for certain industries, so I have to keep that in mind. And even though I have massive amounts of radio towers not that far away, we're just going to add another one here so there's some coverage. And a small recycling depot just to handle some of the garbage this far out. We're also going to be including some road surface maintenance and park maintenance buildings out here as well. Things are getting very spread out and far apart. These services are getting a bit thin, so I have to add a bit here as well. For the main street, we're mostly going to be using the northeast building packs for this. It's an older town. I've been hemming and hawing whether or not to turn it into a tourist destination. That would make some sense considering the beach, but I really just wanted to keep it this quiet little seaside community. For this area, I really should have made these more like rural properties with houses that are not like fairly basic houses on large lots. I didn't really think of it when I was filling it in, but it would be probably a little more appropriate. Sometimes working with these surfaces, it can be really annoying. It's far easier to draw out your surface and then just cycle through all the different tile surfaces to find something you feel is appropriate. light on the detailing for the town, but when it comes to industry, I always feel that industry always needs a little more detailing to make it look right. It needs larger lots and machinery and distressed surfaces around it in order for it to look actually like an industrial area. I'm going to be doing a bit of surface detailing, but I'm not going to get too crazy with it. This surface detailing is probably your best bang for your buck. If you're thinking of detailing from a bit of a distance, it reads well from altitude, probably far better than pretty much any other type of detailing you could do. I'm going to come back in here and change out this rail line here. Past the town, there's really no need for this double track. Yeah, these birds seem to be in distress. I think the animations for some of these animals needs a bit more work. A few extra trees around here to break up this hard edge a little bit. I believe these resource piles, I believe I got these off Sully's Discord. You used to be able to use them through the developer menu, or you could find them and they took that away. Somebody was clever enough to add them back in, which is great. I sometimes have a hard time trying to figure out what to fill these big industrial lots with. What do these industry buildings actually do? And sometimes it can be a bit, I just don't know what to put in here sometimes. This area of the map is going to be pretty lightly detailed. I'm not going to be doing too much here. And a bit of light staining everywhere just to break up the monotony of these flat surfaces. Okay, onto the mine. Now this is actually modeled after a real world location. This is inspiration taken from the Britannia copper mine located near Squamish, British Columbia. And it has this rather obvious structure, very unique. You can see it from the highway. It's very imposing. And I'm trying to figure out a way to build it here. And I was going to build it out of like props and bits and pieces. Here I'm trying out one of the extensions. I think it's one of the French police station or something like that. And I included here just to show the process of working with this stuff. It turns out this is not nearly large enough for the structure I want to build, so I have to replace it with something else. But it's fun to work with these props and stuff because just doing this, I can already think of several other uses I could use this for other than this particular building project. To get the size of structure I need, we're going to go with a prop version of one of these industrial buildings here, and we're just going to start sinking them into the hillside. Now, I don't know really much about mining at all, so keep that in mind when I'm building this. And you might be asking yourself, what am I building here and how is this a mine? What you got to keep in mind here is that at the very top here, there's going to be some rail tracks that are, and the entrance to the mine at the very top. And all the material comes at the top of this structure. What this is inside, it's kind of like the outside of the building doesn't really tell you anything about what this actually does. It's what's known as a concentrator. So all the ore, raw ore, will come in at the top, and then it gets crushed and refined and sifted and stuff. Once it's done at one level, gravity is used as free energy to dump it down into the next level for more refining. From the outside, it doesn't really look much. I've been to this location. Inside, it's just like a cavernous building. It's absolutely amazing inside. Outside, it's a bit of, what is that? Now I have to do some improvising here with buildings to make this work. So we're going to be splicing together several different industry buildings here to make a plausible structure. several things. Another thing to keep in mind here is it's not going to be very detailed for an industrial build, and that's because the Britannia copper mine is not a functioning mine anymore. It shut down, I think, in the 80s, and nowadays it's essentially a museum. And so, of course, all the real heavy machinery is being stripped away to make it safe for tourists. And yeah, you're not going to see a whole lot of like mechanical stuff here, just enough to exhibits for visitors to look at and little information plaques to tell you what they were for. And like I was saying, I don't really know anything about mines here, so I'm just choosing props that seem appropriate or plausible for some use. Now, unfortunately, you can't sink rail lines into the ground or bury them like that, so they're gonna stick out like that. And I'm gonna add, like, here's one prop I found which seemed plausible for loading up rail cars. And I found these mine entrances here, which are perfect. We just gotta line them up here to the tracks. Extra building down here just to hide this strangeness where these two buildings come together here. Now, when I was looking at the Google Maps of this area, I noticed there's like a settling pond or a agitator or whatever those structures are called. It's just sitting at the top of the hill. It's not indicated or marked by anything as to what it actually is for. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to add more water filter sewage treatment. So we're just going to hide that back in here. We're also going to be using an office building for our visitor center. The space in here is really cramped, so there's only so much stuff I can actually add in here, and I have to cut back the mountainside a fair amount to actually get things to actually fit. One fun thing about this site is there used to be, it's a ghost town now, but way up in the mountain was a whole community of people who worked at the mine. Like they had schools and gymnasiums and a community center, it was everything. It's all gone now. A really cool historic site. There's this building on the side of it. I didn't know how to represent it. So we're going to use this agricultural manufacturing building here, and we're just going to sink it down. And these catwalks were still exposed. I thought, oh, we'll leave those out just to give a little more visual interest. And just line everything up here. Door decals are a little oversized, but it's all I have, so we're going to use these. You might also be thinking this building looks really clean for a historic site, and yeah, it is. It's surprisingly clean looking from the highway. This rail line here is an abandoned rail line, so I'm just going to cover it with surfaces to give it that effect. We're going with a gravel surface and a few layers of grass surfaces. Now, unfortunately, you see there's a bit of a glitch there with the surfaces. It actually is visible on the overpass above it. It comes and goes, so it's obviously surfaces are fighting there. I should come back and fix it, but unfortunately I did the entire surface as one continuous piece. That means deleting everything and starting again. I'll get around to it. This really shows off how much you can actually do with these new surfaces. I forget how big the mine is, but underground it's quite extensive. It goes on for a considerable area. I'm pretty sure this was one of the largest mines in British Columbia. It employed a considerable number of people for a very long time. This particular road looks way too new and fresh. We need to age it up a little bit. using these houses here for essentially for bunk houses for the mine. Like I said, there was an entire town associated with this place, but I just thought it was important to include some of them, as they could have been part of the museum, right? You can go look at the living conditions for people who actually worked at the mine here. So essentially it's more like a representation of them. I did consider putting in the ghost town. I don't have the space for it. On the other side of this ridge is actually Queensport itself, so there just wasn't room on this map for that. Unfortunately, the real world location, there's absolutely nothing left. It was to prevent people from, or stop people from hiking up there and that sort of stuff. And just some final landscaping to tie everything together. Okay, so I keep forgetting to do this, but I've been neglecting the naming of the towns, so we're just going to take care of this right now. So for our little lighthouse community, this is going to be known as Driftwood Cove. Our university town is going to be known as Rosehaven. Of course, this down here is the Snug Harbor. And our new little town is going to be known as Copper Shores. And for our purposes, this is going to be known as the Dominion Copper Mine. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to detail up this more wild end of the coastline. We have one more build to do up here before we move on to a new section of the city, a section of the city we haven't even seen yet. I look forward to that. I will see you all next week in the next episode. Bye.